Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources podcast show. I'm absolutely delighted to have today with us James Mulvany. James is the founder and CEO of Radio.co. James, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about the company?
Sure. So Radio.co is an online platform for broadcasters looking to centralise the management of their radio channels from the cloud. So basically, it replaces software that would normally sit on a computer in a studio, handles everything from receiving live streams from DJs who can be anywhere in the world to scheduling programs and content to go out specific times of the day, and also keeping track on listeners, looking how people are tuning in, where they're listening from, what devices they're using to tune in.
And what does and where you're based?
We're based in Manchester City Centre. We're a team of 20 people.
Fantastic. And where's your audience? Where's your customers generally based?
So our customers really are all over the world. We're about 50% of our clients being in the US, and the other half literally being from everywhere from EU, obviously, to Asia, Africa. Our clients are not just radio stations. They could be things like DJs and musicians wanting to create a channel to promote their work. They can be brands and charities looking to use radio as a medium to engage with the audiences. Real mix of different use cases, and also things like in-store radio and things like that as well.
And they can find the app in Android and iOS store?
We have apps for Android and iOS, which we brand up for our customers. So they effectively, our service effectively works like a white label solution. So it's really tools for broadcasters to manage everything. In terms of the actual experience the listeners or our clients' listeners get, it's really up to the client themselves. But one of the things we do have is brandable Android and iOS apps.
Fantastic. And look, you've been in the media industry for a long time now. Can you give a bit of a sense of a typical day for our listeners, for you in the business?
Sure. I mean, for my role now, I started out as a sort of solo entrepreneur. So my story was I went off to university, and before that I was looking at going into radio as a DJ. While I was doing that, I kind of cut my teeth in the technical side of things and decided to go down that route. So I went off to university, and back then I was really juggling everything. So I was doing customer support and sales and marketing, also learned a bit of code. Nowadays things are very much different. So I guess my role is very much like a sort of traditional MD or CEO, in that I'm very much involved with all the aspects of the business. I quite enjoy the product life cycle, in terms of development, but I don't really write any code anymore. Likewise, I'm quite engaged with marketing and sales and how we can add value to our customers, that kind of thing as well. So my role really is in a management capacity, but getting involved with the different aspects of what it takes to run a successful software as a service style company.
Absolutely. And can you perhaps name, James, for us someone that's had a tremendous impact on you, perhaps who's been a leader to you, maybe even a mentor?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I saw this question, because I'm not the sort of person, I don't particularly have, I couldn't name, like, it'd be, easy to name one of the obvious people like Steve Jobs, for example. But, I was a bit of a geeky kid. I would look at all sorts of people who, when I was growing up, from people I saw on TV, and people who are running local businesses. So I can't really name one person or a significant person who's influenced me, but I was really kind of a bit of a geeky kid, and I used to enjoy studying business owners and looking at what they did and finding out things about certain celebrities. You might find out, for example, like Jonathan Ross, who's got a production company that makes a lot of the shows that he's involved with, and thinking, well, that's quite interesting, because a lot of people don't see that. A lot of people just see him as a TV presenter, for example. But there's lots of people who have got things going on in the background that aren't always obvious, and I think you can learn a lot by sort of studying this.
Employee engagement is critical to the success of any business.
Yeah.
So what are you doing within Radio.co from the top to keep your employees engaged?
I think it's really important. I agree with you completely, and it's very important for retention as well. You want to make sure that your staff are happy and you retain them. And I've always been a big believer in letting people do what they do best, not having too much of a rigid structure so people are kind of confined to one really specific role. if someone has an interest in developing a certain skill set, allowing them to do that, or finding a way within the business that will be beneficial for them, but also within the company to allow them to do that.
And what do you think is the biggest challenge facing leaders today?
Brexit. I don't know. To be honest, like the recession saw lots of businesses collapse, sort of 6, 7, 8 years ago. But also it was a time for lots of businesses to flourish as well. And that was kind of around the time where I was starting out. Didn't really impact me. So I don't know. I mean, of course, I think Brexit's going to change everything. And, a lot of people are very worried about it. I don't think there's one specific problem. Obviously, at the moment, there is the sort of skills gap and the skills shortage, because there's lots of people wanting to recruit, especially for companies like ours, recruiting people who have got experience in technical things and high tech programmers, developers, and obviously there's more jobs than there are people to do those things. So I guess that's probably one of the main problems at the moment, really.
And what's perhaps the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I think it's probably just being persistent. Again, if you're starting out as an entrepreneur, it's sometimes really tempting to go off on different tangents and come up with tons of ideas and think, I went through this phase about 5-10 years ago when I was at university, and I'd be registering domain names almost like on a weekly basis for different business ideas I had. And I think you sometimes need to learn to ignore those voices and actually just stick with what is working or what appears to be working, and just be persistent.
That's great advice there. And how do you engage new employees to understand the culture of your company when they come in and work for you, James?
I think, again, it's making sure that, first of all, when you're hiring the right people that have got a good cultural fit, and that, will kind of get on well with the other employees. But also, again, kind of goes back to what I said before, just be a bit hands-off and let them flourish, let them actually take control over their work and give them the opportunity to sort of exceed your expectations.
And in your opinion, what do you see perhaps as the one mistake leaders are making more frequently than others?
Well, one thing I hate is goes back to what I just said before, micromanagement. Like, I think sometimes you can put too much pressure on someone as well, and it can kind of cause problems.
What do you think is the one sort of behaviour trait that you've seen derail more leaders' careers?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I've got an answer to that. I don't know. Actually, it's an interesting question. No, I don't know. Behaviour trait that maybe being selfish.
never easy one to answer that. And what do you see perhaps in your industry, particularly it's a very dynamic, fast changing industry. What do you see as the biggest changes that are going to be happening in the next few years, and how do you think that will also affect your ability to attract and retain the best talent?
Well, I think, of course, the technology, just generally, things like AI are coming in. They're going to have a big impact on everything we do in day-to-day life, really. And, of course, there's going to be lots of jobs or sort of maybe even entire industries that vanish because of what technology is doing. But also other ones that are born from it as well. And I think that's already kind of starting to happen right now, and certainly has been really apparent in the last couple of years. So I think that's what's going to be most interesting, particularly with the idea of things like driverless vehicles, and everyone's saying, well, people like driving lorries or driving taxis, are they going to be around in a few years' time if everything's been replaced by computers? I don't know, is the question, but I'm sure there'll be lots of industries that are born from it as well.
And what do you, if you had your time again and you were giving your own 20-year-old self advice, what's the one thing that you would tell yourself?
Well, I've got two things written down here. So first of all, think bigger. When I look, because I'm 30 now, so 10 years ago, I look back when I was 20, I just started up business. I was in my own little bubble, and I think I needed to get outside that bubble by sort of thinking bigger and realising the actual potential that lay ahead, rather than just focusing too much on, well, I just need to make myself a living. It needed to be, right, okay, how can I grow this into a bigger, successful company? So that would be the advice I'd give myself, I think.
That's fantastic. And James, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you? You can find out more about the company, can reach out to you, the company, or your good self?
Sure. You can drop us an email on studio@radio.co. Visit the website radio.co, and if you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch.
James, thank you so much for sharing that, and good luck with the business, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me. It's been fun.